What if price of survival wasn't set in your own country, but in Washington? Tariffs were meant to punish giants like China. But who pays the real price? Not Beijing nor Wall Street. It's Min, a seamstress in Ho Chi Minh City, stitching shirts late into the night under a 20% tariff. It's Somchai, a shrimp farmer in Thailand, staring at an unsold ponds after his exports were hit with a 19% duty. It's Amina in Bangladesh, whose dreams of concrete home for her family now slips away under a 20% tariff on garments, originally proposed at 37%. The US is fighting superpowers, but it's the smaller nations caught in the crossfire. These stories may sound personal. Min in Vietnam, Somchai in Thailand, Amina in Bangladesh, but they are all connected by the one force far bigger than them. It's American consumers. Now, what does that really mean?
Think about it in this way. The US has just over 340 million people, but its collective spending power is larger than that of entire continents. In 2024, the US consumer spending alone exceeded $20 trillion, more than the entire GDP of China and larger than all of Southeast Asia combined. So, smaller economies will be dependent on US imports to earn dollars, which is essential for everything from buying fuel to medicine. But now US has imposed tariffs on many countries. It has also put 20% tariff on Vietnamese cloth exports. This means that the crucial part is at the risk of losing $44 billion, the figure Vietnam achieved in 2024.
With these tariffs imposed, the price of every shirt or pair of jeans sent to America goes up by one-fifth overnight. Buyers in US don't want to pay that extra cost, so they will cut their orders. Why? Because they have alternatives, they have options, or may explore other ASEAN nations. But for Min, it's a matter of survival and fulfilling dreams. Min, a 39-year-old seamstress in Ho Chi Minh City. For years, she stitched shirts late into the night, saving extra dong from overtime to keep her son in school. But for the factory, tariff means shift cut. For workers like Min, it's smaller paychecks and the risk of layoff. And as millions of Vietnamese families like Min depend on garment factories, which employ around 2.5 million people, so even a small dip in exports can ripple into school fees, grocery bills, and whether children can stay in class or not.
Min now fears her boy may have to leave class early and return to the village. Not because she has stopped working hard, but because of a tariff set thousands of miles away. And that is why the International Monetary Fund has already sounded alarm. In its 2025 review, the IMF warned that if a high tariff remains in place, Vietnam's growth could slow sharply, down to just 5.4% this year, instead of 6.7% many hoped for. On chart, that difference may look like a small drop in percentage points, but in real life, it's a gap between factories paying more to workers for overtime or laying them off. It's a thin line between families climbing into middle class or slipping back into poverty. So while tariff sounds like numbers in Washington, in Hanoi, they decide whether a boy goes to school or not. And Vietnam is not alone. Just across the border, Thailand is beginning to feel the same pressure. According to Reuters, the country exports could face losses up to $27 billion under the US tariff that were once set as high as 36%. The number may look abstract, but history shows what's at stake. Over the last decade, Thailand's exports steadily climbed from around $278 billion in 2018 to more than $319 billion in 2023. Factories, firms, families rode that upward curve with hope. But with the tariffs now hanging over their future, that rising line risks flattening or even falling. Behind every line on the chart, there are real lives. Meet Somchai, a shrimp farmer from Thailand, who invested his savings in modern ponds, only to wonder if buyers will still come. For him, tariffs are not trade policies. They are the difference between feeding his family a full meal or stretching one bowl of rice to the last day. If Thailand fears losing billions, imagine what tariffs mean for a smaller country, more fragile economy, Bangladesh. A country where millions of workers depend on one industry alone, and that is garments. When tariffs hit there, it's not just an export line at risk. It's the heartbeat of the entire nation's workforce. Bangladesh's rise wasn't by chance. It was a quiet revolution. Just decades ago, it was one of the poorest countries on earth, but today it's a beacon of resilience. Between 2010 and 2023, Bangladesh maintained a steady average real GDP growth at 6.4% per year, defying regional volatility and global shocks. At the same time, the ready-made garment industry became the country's backbone, transforming livelihoods. From 15 billion in exports a decade ago to over 38 billion by 2023. It lifted millions out of poverty, educated girls, and reshaped futures. It is not just numbers. It's parents paying for their children's school fees, women gaining financial dignity, entire village springing to life with micro enterprises and hope. But now, with 20% US tariffs, the Bangladeshi garments are more expensive abroad. From Vietnam to Thailand to Bangladesh, families are discovering that tariff doesn't change trade flows, they change lives. And when the cost of survival is decided far away, smaller nations naturally begin to search for an escape route, an alternative system where they are less vulnerable to a single market. That's where the idea of BRICS comes in. To understand why countries like Vietnam and Indonesia are looking towards BRICS, we need to step back to where this story began. It started not in Beijing or Moscow, but in an office at Goldman Sachs in 2001. An economist coined the term BRIC to describe the rising powers: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. At first, it was a catchy label for the investors, but by 2009, those four nations turned the acronym into a political alliance. Their message was clear: the global economy could no longer be run only by Washington and Brussels. In 2010, South Africa joined, giving the bloc a foothold in Africa and turning BRIC into BRICS. Then came 2015 when the group launched the New Development Bank, a rival to IMF and World Bank, offering loans without Western conditions attached. But the real turning point came in 2023 when the BRICS expanded for the first time in more than a decade. It welcomed Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Iran, and Ethiopia, bringing in oil giants, shipping routes, and strategic choke points from the Middle East to Africa. By 2025, Indonesia had joined as a full member, and Vietnam, Turkey, and others lined up as partner. Today, BRICS Plus represents more than half of the world's population and about 44% of global GDP when measured in purchasing power parity. That makes it larger on paper than the G7. But BRICS was never just about numbers. Its real purpose is voice and choice. Voice for countries that feel ignored in Western led institutions. Choice for smaller nations who don't want to be trapped in US tariffs on one side and dollar dominance on the other. Still, BRICS is far from perfect. India and China remain rivals, and new members bringing their own disputes. And while the bloc looks powerful on the paper, it still cannot replace the sheer buying power of American consumers. For smaller Asian economies, that leaves one simple truth. BRICS may be hope for the future, but it cannot erase the pain of tariffs today. So, the numbers make one thing clear. BRICS may have size on paper, but the US still holds unmatched buying power today. And that leaves the smaller nations in painful positions, caught between the two giants. Now the question is, will BRICS shield them? Or will US tariffs decide their fate? Because what's at stake is not only a trade balance or GDP charts. It's the lives of millions waiting to see which way the world turns. What do you think? Can BRICS shield smaller nations, or will US tariffs decide their fate? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more untold stories of power, money, and nations, don't forget to subscribe to GeoEconomica. Thanks for watching.